Hey guys, tonight we journey into a world you think you know, but trust me, you don't. We picture the Victorian era with oil lamps, lace gloves, maybe a foggy, gas-lit London street where top hats tip politely. But the real Victorian life? For most people, it was none of that. No corset ballrooms, no neatly folded newspapers, no Sherlock Holmes solving crimes with charm and a monocle. Instead, it was factory soot, cheap gin, body lice, and endless aching hunger. Before we dive into this grimy labyrinth of human persistence, take a second. If you like this kind of slow burn, deep dive content that helps you both learn and fall asleep, go ahead and like the video, subscribe, and drop a comment below telling us what time it is where you're tuning in from. It's always fascinating to see who's watching this from across the globe, whether it's 9 p.m. in Toronto or 3 a.m. in Jakarta. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft hum, and let's slip together into tonight's story. Tonight's journey, what life was really like for ordinary Victorians. You aren't a noble or a poet. You're not Queen Victoria, Charles Dickens, or even one of the vaguely memorable characters in a period drama. No, tonight, you're you, but you've just woken up in the 19th century, and life is not glamorous. You're in a cramped room that smells like coal dust and boiled cabbage. Your bed is more lice than blanket, and the outside world, when you reach it, will be loud, smoky, unsanitary, and endlessly indifferent to your pain. This is not the history of progress or empire. This is the history of people who woke up tired, worked themselves into the ground, and tried not to die of cholera before dinner. This is the life of chimney sweeps with blackened lungs, of washerwomen whose hands cracked and bled, of street sellers hawking hot eels to survive another day. The Victorian world wasn't clean. It wasn't polite. It wasn't safe. But it was real. And tonight, we're going to live in it. We'll explore everything from the smell of your bedding, to what passed for breakfast, to why drinking water could be a death sentence. You'll learn how ordinary people dressed, bathed, or didn't, and how their belief in moral virtue often clashed violently with a brutal daily reality. You'll walk through workhouses, brush shoulders with typhoid victims, and see what it meant to be a child in a world with no child labor laws. You'll discover how the myth of Victorian decency masked a grinding, unforgiving world of poverty and desperation. But don't worry, this won't be a lecture. It's a bedtime descent into the past. Slowly, quietly, vividly. You'll be there. You'll feel the soot on your skin, hear the factory whistle in the distance, and maybe, just maybe, be grateful for your soft, modern mattress by the time we're done. So lie back, breathe slow, let the past unfold. You've just slipped into the soot-streaked world of the 1800s. You are an ordinary Victorian now, and your day is just beginning. You wake slowly, not because your alarm is going off, but because your body simply gave up trying to sleep through the smell. The air is thick, muggy with the sour scent of sweat, coal dust, and something unidentifiably damp. You don't know if it's the mattress, the walls, or you. It doesn't matter. Everything smells like mildew, ash, and human fatigue. You open your eyes, or rather, you try to. The window, if you can call it that, is a single grimy pane of glass, so streaked with soot and city grime that barely any light gets through. What little sunlight leaks in is gray and smudged, filtered through the factory smoke that hangs over your street like a permanent curse. You blink, adjust, and realize this isn't your bedroom. This is a room the size of a broom closet. The ceiling is low. The wallpaper peels in long strips, stained brown at the edges by years of smoke from the coal fire that doesn't work properly anymore. You're in a tenement, a Victorian boarding house for the working poor. You've got 4 walls, a floor, a bed, and little else. It's cold in winter, hotter than the inside of a stovepipe in summer, and the roof leaks when it remembers to. Your bed is generous to call it that. A straw mattress, flattened almost entirely, with patches sewn together from old potato sacks. It crinkles when you move, not from luxury, but from the brittle straw and the bed bugs you're trying not to disturb. You have a blanket, but you suspect it's shared, either with your siblings or the local lice population. The wooden floor beneath you is uneven. You can feel the slope of it as you swing your legs off the bed. Your feet touch cold wood, then something wet. A mystery puddle. You decide not to investigate. There's no central heating, no radiator hum, no warm air waiting to greet your skin. Just the thin hope that someone downstairs has already lit the kitchen stove, and the warmth will creep its way up through the paper-thin floorboards by next Tuesday. You're wearing the same clothes you fell asleep in, because these are your only clothes. A long shirt made of rough cotton or wool. It's not clean, but it's dry, which is something. You scratch your scalp. It's itchy. You try not to think about why. The walls are thin, too thin. You hear coughing from next door, deep, racking coughs that have been going for days. It's either consumption or something else equally fatal. The wall doesn't muffle the sound at all. You also hear arguing, a woman's voice, something about rent again. Below that, the soft shuffle of mice, and from above, creaking floorboards. Someone's already up and moving. You catch a whiff of something cooking. Porridge, probably, or bread gone stale and toasted until it resembles breakfast. You sit up fully now and rub your face with hands that still sting from yesterday's labor. Blisters across your palms, soot beneath your fingernails. Your fingernails are cracked. Your knuckles are raw. You were born poor, and the day ahead of you promises more of the same. There's no privacy, no bathroom to retreat to. If you live with family, and most Victorians do, then someone else is already rustling in the corner, pulling on trousers or adjusting a corset. If you're lucky, there's a curtain strung across the room. If not, you all just politely look at the floor. The chamber pot in the corner is full. It smells like vinegar and defeat. Someone will have to empty it. Maybe you, maybe the kid. But it's got to go down the shared stairwell and out to the alley where it will be dumped into the gutter running along the cobbled street. There's no indoor plumbing, not unless you're rich, which you're not. Your wash basin is cold metal. There's water in the pitcher, if anyone remembered to fill it the night before. You splash your face and flinch. It's freezing. No soap, unless there's leftover laundry soap from last week. You rub your skin anyway, out of habit or desperation. Your teeth ache. You don't brush them. No one does, not really. You might chew on a stick if you're lucky, or rub your gums with salt. Mostly, you try to ignore the pain and hope the rot doesn't spread before payday. You try not to breathe through your nose too much. It's not the worst smelling morning you've had, but it's bad enough. You notice the mold in the corner of the ceiling has grown larger. You think about telling someone. Then you don't. Everyone already knows. No one has the money to fix it. Your boots, if you own any, are stiff with dried mud and probably still wet from yesterday's rain. Your socks, if you own two, don't match, and one of them has a hole big enough to qualify as a window. You pull them on anyway, because today, like every day, requires walking, lots of it. Outside, the street is already waking up. You hear the clatter of iron-rimmed wheels over cobblestone, the clip-clop of a horse hauling goods, a boy shouting something you can't quite hear, probably selling newspapers or matches, or maybe just shouting because that's how you make yourself heard in a city this loud. A dog barks. Someone shouts back. Somewhere in the distance, a factory whistle screams to life. It's still barely dawn, and already the gears of the Victorian city are turning. You'll have to hurry. Work doesn't wait, and lateness means lost pay. Or worse. There's no breakfast yet. That comes later, if it comes at all. You look around your little room one last time. The sagging shelf, the cracked mirror, the tin cup, the coat you pray won't rip this week. This is your life. This is your world. Tight, damp, loud, and tired. You step toward the door, careful not to trip on the loose board near the threshold. You open it slowly, trying not to wake the baby in the corner or the old man downstairs with a cough that sounds final. The hallway smells like damp wool and someone's cheap cologne. You breathe through your mouth and begin your descent. Narrow wooden stairs, no railing. Every creak another protest from a building far too old to still be standing. And outside, London, or Manchester, or Birmingham, or Liverpool. You're not sure it matters. The sky is gray. The air is thick with fog and soot. You step into the street. The wind bites your cheeks, and you pull your collar tighter. The Victorian day has begun, and you're already late. You make your way down the street with the same grim determination that everyone else has. No one walks quickly. No one dawdles. Every step is just a resignation to the fact that if you stop moving, you'll freeze, starve, or be stepped on by a cart. It's morning in the Victorian city, which means smells. Everywhere. The stale stink of coal smoke clings to the buildings like ivy. Beneath that, a mix of horse dung, human waste, rotting vegetables, and the vague scent of something wet that may once have been alive. You pull your collar up again, not to keep warm, though it helps, but to filter the air, just a little. It's time to find breakfast, or what passes for it. You don't have a kitchen, not unless you're part of the lucky few with a private hearth and a coal allowance generous enough to cook. If you're in a lodging house or a shared tenement, there might be a common fire downstairs. Might, if someone lit it, if the coal hasn't run out, if the chimney isn't clogged again. You pass a bakery, the window fogged. The smell of bread, fresh and warm, leaks into the street like a cruel joke. It smells like comfort, like home, like a life you don't have. Inside, people with slightly cleaner coats and slightly better shoes are buying rolls wrapped in paper. You keep walking. You pass a woman selling tea from a battered tin kettle. She calls it tea. It's mostly hot water and bitterness, but it's warm and it's 1 penny. You give her a nod, hand her your coin, and she hands you a chipped ceramic mug that's probably older than your parents'. You sip it carefully, wincing. It's scalding hot, mostly tannins and grit, but it cuts through the cold and quiets your stomach just enough to keep you moving. Breakfast, if you can afford it, comes from the street. There's a boy with a basket of muffins, round, dry, hard like bricks. They've been sitting out since dawn. He rings a bell and calls out, "Hot muffins!" which is optimistic at best. You check your pocket. Maybe later. You turn a corner and nearly trip over a girl with a tin of boiled eels. She looks about 7. Her hands are purple with cold, her fingernails caked in soot. She's already sold 2 tins, one to a drunk, one to a man who didn't ask what was inside. You wonder if the eels are fresh. You decide not to ask. No one asks. You find a street vendor selling fried potatoes, thick slices, swimming in grease, blackened at the edges from a pan that hasn't been washed in a week. They come wrapped in yesterday's newspaper. They cost a 1/2 penny. They're hot. You buy one. You burn your fingers. You don't care. This is your meal. There's no toast, no butter, no bacon. No eggs unless you've stolen one from a nest or found a broken one at the market. You get starch, salt, and heat, and sometimes that's enough. You pass a man standing behind a stall with cheap coffee. It smells more like burnt rope than beans, but it's liquid and caffeinated. He sells it with a splash of milk if you're lucky, and sugar if you're rich, which you're not. You rinse your fingers in a puddle before you eat. That's hygiene in your world. Water is a gamble. You don't drink it unless it's been boiled, steeped, or blessed. Most of it is tainted by sewage, by runoff, by the ghosts of dead rats. Teeth? You still have most of them, which makes you better off than half your neighbors. You don't brush them, not in any meaningful way. Maybe you chew on a rag. Maybe you rinse with vinegar. Maybe you don't. Toothpaste exists for the rich. It's made of charcoal and chalk, and it comes in jars that cost more than a week's coal. Soap is another matter. If you're a woman, you might carry a sliver of lye soap wrapped in cloth. If you're a man, you use whatever's near. Maybe coal ash, maybe sand, maybe nothing. Baths are rare, expensive, and discouraged by some who think too much bathing leads to weakness, temptation, or illness. When you do bathe, it's once a week, if that. You stand in a tin basin, pour a bucket over your head, scrub as best you can, and pray the water isn't too cold or too filthy. Families often share the same water. By the time the last person steps in, it's more broth than bath. Public bathhouses exist, but they cost money, and time, and dignity. You go in, undress in a room full of strangers, and hope you're not robbed or laughed at while you try to wash the soot from your ears. Your fingernails are never clean. They are permanently stained with ash, soil, and coal dust. If you're a woman, you're expected to look clean anyway. Pale, neat, modest. If you're a man, you're expected to look capable, which usually just means not dead yet. Hair is another gamble. You don't shampoo. You comb if you own one. You oil it if you can. If you're a working woman, you pin it up. If you're a man, you slick it back with whatever you can find: grease, soap, or spit. You might wash it once a month. You might not. You don't have time. If you have lice, and let's be honest, you probably do, you pick them out by hand. If you can't, you wear a scarf and pretend. Children are especially prone to them. Schools are breeding grounds. So are beds. So are hats. You try not to think about it. You try not to itch. Your clothes are the same as yesterday. They'll be the same tomorrow. Maybe you wash them on Sunday. Maybe not. You can't afford to wear things out by cleaning them too often. You wear them until they're rags. Then you patch the rags. Then you wear the patches. Undergarments? If you're a woman, you might own one chemise. You wear it beneath your dress to keep your outer clothing clean. If you're a man, you might have drawers. Long, woolen, scratchy. But they're better than nothing, which is what many people wear beneath their trousers. Smell is part of the landscape. Everyone has one. Some sharp, some earthy, some metallic from factory work. You notice it when someone new arrives, someone who smells like soap, lavender, or the countryside. It fades fast. The city covers everything. You finish your fried potatoes and wipe your hands on your coat. You're not full. You're not satisfied. But you're warm, and that's enough for now. You pass a water pump. A line of women waits to fill their pails. One hauls a heavy bucket to her shoulder and walks off without speaking. Another curses under her breath at the boy who spilled hers. No one helps. Everyone's busy. You pass a wash house. Steam pours from the doorway. Inside, women scrub clothes against metal boards, their hands red and raw. They've been here since dawn. They'll be here till dusk. The soap stings. The water's black. They work in silence. You pass a man in an alley. He's vomiting, or drunk, or both. No one looks. He's part of the scenery. The city breathes around you, sooty, noisy, indifferent. Somewhere, another factory whistle sounds. Breakfast is over. The workday begins. You wipe your mouth with your sleeve, swallow what's left of your pride, and join the flow of bodies moving toward the factories, the docks, the streets, the laundries. You are fed. You are not clean. You are ready. And the Victorian machine waits for you with open, sooty arms. You step carefully over the muck in the road, adjusting the frayed edge of your coat and trying not to think about what just squelched under your boot. The morning's barely begun, but your clothes are already working against you. They're not designed for comfort, not really. They're made to cover you, to keep in warmth, or pretend to, and to look respectable enough that no one calls you a vagrant. Your coat is heavy wool. It used to be black. Now it's the color of city fog and dried ash. The lining's gone, torn out by someone who probably sold it for tuppence. The buttons don't match. One is wood. One is bone. The third is just a hole you've learned to ignore. Your shirt is stiff with yesterday's sweat, or maybe the day before. You can't afford daily washing, not with coal so expensive and soap even more so. So you wear your grime like everyone else does, with a shrug and a quiet prayer that the rain won't soak through. You glance around. Men wear trousers, wool, coarse, often patched at the knees or held up with twine if the buttons are long gone. A waistcoat, if you're lucky. A scarf tied just tight enough to suggest dignity. Hats are essential. Doesn't matter if it's a bowler, a flat cap, or something shapeless that might once have belonged to your grandfather. A man without a hat looks suspicious. And women, poor women, dress in layers. Not because it's fashionable, but because it's survival. A single dress, threadbare and faded, layered over a chemise that's seen better centuries. Stockings held up with bits of ribbon. Boots that were made for someone else and now pinch with every step. Hair pinned back, not for modesty, but to keep the lice from spreading faster than they already do. Everything scratches. Everything smells faintly of damp wool, coal smoke, and unwashed skin. You've grown used to it. Doesn't mean you like it. Gloves are a luxury. You might have fingerless ones, holes in every fingertip. You try to hide them when someone important walks by. Clothes aren't just clothes here. They're survival. Wet clothes mean illness, and illness means no work. No work means no food. No food means you don't wake up in the room you just left. If you wake up at all. Which brings us to shelter. You live in what the papers politely call a dwelling. The truth? It's a brick box barely held together with mold, mice, and misplaced optimism. A tenement or a back-to-back squeezed into a slum that even the city planners pretend not to see. If you're lucky, your room is on the second floor. Less rats, less flooding, but closer to the roof, which leaks. Pick your poison. The hallway is always dark. Gaslight doesn't reach this far, and candles are too expensive to waste. You learn to feel the walls, count the steps, and hope the creaking stair beneath your heel doesn't give way this time. Your front door? A warped plank of wood that doesn't quite latch. The lock's broken, not that it would stop anyone. You wedge a chair under the handle at night, or sleep light. Inside, there's one room. If you live alone, it feels like a cell. If you live with a family, and most do, it feels like a can of slowly stewing humanity. The walls sweat in the summer and freeze in the winter. There's no insulation, just cracked plaster and patches of wallpaper so old, the flowers have faded into ghostly outlines. You hang a towel over the worst cracks in the wall, not to fix the drafts. Nothing fixes the drafts, but just to feel like you're doing something about them. The floor is wood, rotten in places, loud in others. Mice dart across it with more confidence than you. Rats thump around in the ceiling. You stop noticing. Furniture? A bed, if you can call it that. A pile of straw or horsehair in a wooden frame. The springs gave out before you were born. The blanket has more holes than threads. If you live with others, you take turns sleeping, or you all squeeze in. Elbow to rib, knee to shoulder. There's a table, wobbly, stained. You prop it with a brick or a book that no one reads anymore. 2 chairs, maybe 3. One has a broken leg. One squeaks when you look at it. One's missing entirely. No cupboards. Just a crate where you store your bread, your tin cup, your spoon. If you have a pot, you guard it like gold. If you have a kettle, It's dented from being used as a weapon during last week's shouting match next door. Heating? A coal fire if you can afford it. But the chimney's been stuffed with soot for years, and when you light it, the room fills with smoke before it gives off any heat. You cough, open the window a crack, and lose what little warmth you had. Still, it's better than outside, because outside, it's worse. The alley behind your home is paved in mud and whatever the neighbors dumped last night. Human waste, dead animals, broken glass. It never really dries. It just changes consistency depending on the season. You share an outdoor privy with 5, 10, maybe 15 other families. A wooden box with a hole and a smell you can taste in your throat. You wait in line in the dark, holding your breath and your dignity. You never sit. You never touch anything. When it rains, the alley floods. When it snows, it freezes. When it's summer, it bakes into a crust of decay and resentment. And then there are the shared walls, the shouting, the crying, the arguments that start over bread and end with police pounding on the door. You hear it all. There's no insulation, no privacy, just a thin board between your exhaustion and someone else's despair. You learn not to listen. You learn to sleep anyway. Roof over your head or not, the housing is an insult dressed up as a necessity. Your landlord doesn't live here. He collects rent once a week, never smiles, carries a stick. You pay or you leave. It's that simple. Rent costs half your wages, sometimes more. If someone dies, the landlord rents the bed before the body is cold. Nothing is wasted. Not space, not breath, not you. And still, it's shelter, sort of. Because outside, in the streets, are those who have no bed, no ceiling, no four walls to call their own. The homeless, the workless, the forgotten. Children sleeping in coal sheds, women huddled under crates, men curled in doorways, clutching their last coin or their last bottle. Some of them used to have rooms like yours. Now they don't. You could be one of them by next week. One wrong step, one illness, one missed shift. You pull your coat tighter, feel the roughness of the fabric against your skin and try not to shiver. This is your shelter. This is your uniform. This is your armor. It doesn't fit. It doesn't protect you. But it's all you have. And the wind is starting to pick up again. You've eaten what you can. You've layered on every piece of clothing you own. Now it's time for the most Victorian part of your Victorian life. Work. Not a career, not a profession, not a dream fulfilled or a step up a ladder. Just work. Survival work. The kind that eats your hours, breaks your body, and still doesn't pay enough to keep you warm at night. You join the morning flood of people moving through the city streets like blood through the veins of a wheezing, coal-choked beast. No one talks. Everyone trudges. Boots slap cobblestones. Cartwheels squeal over the wet stone. Somewhere a baby's crying. Somewhere else, someone's already drunk. If you're a man, your job likely begins at the factory gates, or the shipyards, the mines, or the brickyards. You clock in by the bell, and if you're late, even by 2 minutes, you're sent home. No pay, no sympathy. The foreman doesn't care that the alley was flooded, or the tram broke down, or your child died in the night. You're either here or you're not. And if you are here, then it's straight into hell. The factory is loud, hot, and filled with machines that do not forgive. Iron arms swing overhead. Belts whir and snap. Gears clank like they're chewing on bones. There are no safety rails, no ear protection, no gloves unless you brought your own. You wipe your forehead with a sleeve already soaked in sweat. The steam from the boiler room fogs your lungs. The dust from the cotton chokes your throat. If you're in a matchstick factory, the phosphorus eats your jaw. If you're in the dye works, the chemicals soak into your skin and stain your palms blue, red, or poison green. You are paid by the hour, but injury takes seconds. Lose a finger, wrap it in cloth and keep working. Lose a hand, try the workhouse. Lose your footing? You're not the first crushed beneath the gears, and you won't be the last. The children working beside you, yes, children, are 8, maybe 9 years old. Small hands make for better textile weaving. Smaller wages make for better profits. Their lungs are already blackening. They don't know it yet. But you do, you see them cough, and you don't say a word. If you're not in a factory, maybe you're a coal miner, in which case forget the sky. You won't see it again until sundown. You're lowered underground in a creaking cage with a lamp in one hand and a pick in the other. The tunnel walls drip with damp. The ceiling sags above you like it's thinking about collapsing. The air is thick. The methane hangs like a silent threat. And the black dust? It never leaves your skin. Not even in dreams. You swing your pick until your hands blister, and then you swing it more. You load carts. You haul rocks. You dodge rats and pray to whatever god listens underground that this isn't the day the mine claims you. You can't stand fully upright. Not here. And after years, your spine forgets how to. If you're on the docks, you're a docker, lifting barrels, sacks, crates, and chains. All day. Every day. Your back screams by noon. Your shoulders burn. You eat standing up with your hands still black from grease and salt water. And if you're out of work, you line up at the gates of a workhouse and hope they haven't reached capacity. You beg. You sweep streets for a crust of bread. You pawn your boots. You haul bricks for half wages and pretend you're grateful. And then there's the women's work, which is to say, every other kind of labor. If you're a woman, you don't rest. You serve. Maybe you're a laundress. Your hands are raw, permanently red from boiling water and caustic lye soap. You carry wet clothes heavier than bricks. You scrub until your knuckles split. You go home soaked and still have your own family's laundry to do. Or maybe you're a maid, which sounds more dignified than it is. You're up at 4 a.m. lighting fires in someone else's hearth, dusting someone else's mantle, peeling potatoes for someone else's dinner. You eat the scraps, sleep in the basement, and speak only when spoken to. You clean chamber pots. You wring out bed sheets soiled by babies or drunk lords. You carry buckets up 4 flights of stairs without spilling a drop or else. If you're really unlucky, you're a match girl. You sit for 12 hours in a cramped room, dipping sticks into white phosphorus paste. The paste coats your fingers, your teeth, your lungs. You develop a condition called phossy jaw, a rotting, painful, flesh-eating disease that lights up the inside of your skull like a lantern. And you still come back the next day. Because you have to. Some women work as hawkers, selling flowers, matches, rags, anything cheap enough to be bought on impulse and light enough to carry for miles. You shout your wares in a voice going hoarse, dodge carts and horses, and pray the police don't fine you for blocking the walkway. And if you can't find work, you might turn to the oldest job in the world. You wear rouge made from brick dust, a dress held together with pins, and stand under gas lamps on corners where the constables look the other way, until they don't. Men leer, men spit, men don't pay, men hit, and still, it's work. Even children have jobs. The lucky ones sell newspapers. The unlucky ones clean chimneys. They're lowered into flues barely wider than their shoulders. They cough soot before they learn to read. Their knees and elbows are scraped raw from crawling through brick tunnels. If they get stuck, they panic. If they scream, someone listens, sometimes. If not, they die quietly, and the flue is bricked shut behind them. You don't complain. No one does. Because everyone is tired. Everyone is hungry. Everyone is replaceable. You might work 12 hours, 14 hours, more. You might faint at your post. You might pass out from heat stroke, cold, hunger, dehydration. But there's no such thing as a sick day. No such thing as paid leave. You clock out only when you're told to, or when the foreman gets bored, or when your shift is over and your knees have forgotten how to straighten. And what do you earn? A few coins, just enough to buy food, maybe coal, maybe soap, maybe not. Rent is due. Bread has gone up again. Your boots have cracked. Your child needs medicine. You need a miracle. But miracles aren't unionized. So you drag your body back home. Each step aches. Your fingers tremble. Your shoulders feel like rusted hinges. You pass other workers going in the opposite direction. Their shifts are just beginning. They look like ghosts. So do you. Back in your room, you sit, for the first time all day, and the silence is almost worse than the noise. You stare at your hands. They look older than your parents'. You take off your boots. Your socks are wet. You try not to cry. Because tomorrow, you'll do it again. You're finally off your feet. For a moment, there's stillness, but your mind doesn't rest. It's hard to, in a world where death is never more than a wrong breath away. So what do you turn to? Belief. In the Victorian world, belief isn't optional. It's stitched into your soul, whispered over your cradle, reinforced by sermons and scoldings and the fear of eternal damnation. From the moment you were old enough to understand speech, you were told, God is watching, always. The kind of God most Victorians imagine isn't gentle or warm. He's a judge. He wears black robes. He keeps a ledger. He knows when you skip church, when you covet your neighbor's goose, when you drink too much gin, or think too fondly about the widow who lives upstairs. Your vicar preaches fire and brimstone every Sunday, and twice on holidays. He tells you that hard work brings salvation, that poverty is virtuous, that wealth means temptation, that if you're suffering, it's part of God's divine plan, and you should be grateful for the spiritual growth. You sit stiffly in a hard pew, your clothes still damp from the morning's fog, trying to ignore the hunger twisting in your belly. The church is cold, always cold. The hymns are long, the sermon longer. But you go because you must. If you don't go to church, people notice. The landlord notices. Your boss notices. Your neighbors whisper. You're not just shirking religion, you're courting suspicion. Are you dangerous? Are you a drunkard? A radical? Worse, a free thinker? No, you keep your head down. You kneel when you're told, even if the floor is freezing. You murmur the prayers, even if your lips are chapped and cracked. You try not to fall asleep during the sermon. God is watching. So is everyone else. But faith in the Victorian world isn't just about pews and Bibles. It's about fear. There are demons in the shadows, spirits in the alleys, ghosts behind the curtains. Everyone knows someone who saw something they couldn't explain. You avoid mirrors at night. Bad luck. You touch wood to prevent curses. You throw salt over your left shoulder if you spill it, to blind the devil. If a clock stops ticking unexpectedly, someone's going to die. You never walk under a ladder. You never whistle indoors. You never open an umbrella inside the house. You can't explain why. You just don't. Superstition is the religion of the street. It's passed from mouth to ear, from grandmother to child. It's in the way you glance behind you when you feel a chill, the way you cross yourself when passing a graveyard, the way you freeze when a black cat crosses your path. And yet, you believe in hope too. You carry charms, a rabbit's foot, a coin with a hole in it, a cross on a string. Some people wear lockets with hair from a dead relative inside. Some sleep with Bibles beneath their pillows. Some place iron over doorways to ward off evil. And everyone believes in death. Not just that it happens, but that it comes with rules. That the soul must be properly prepared, the body properly handled, or else things go wrong. If someone dies, you stop the clocks in the room. You cover the mirrors. You open the window to let the soul fly out. You never, ever let a corpse remain in a house with the windows shut. If you see a crow, someone will pass. If you dream of teeth falling out, someone already has. And if the dog howls at nothing, well, you'd best light a candle and say a prayer. Funerals are sacred. Even the poorest families scrape together what they can to provide a decent burial. A cheap coffin, a rented carriage, a procession through the muddy streets, black veils fluttering in the soot-stained air. Because to be buried poorly, or worse, not at all, is to risk becoming restless. Ghost stories are common. They're not told for fun. They're told as warnings. Spirits roam when their business is unfinished. They knock, they moan, they flick candles. Children are told to behave or the dead will find them. Some adults believe it too. You never laugh at the dead. You never speak ill of them. And you never step on a grave without apologizing. But it's not all gloom. Some find comfort in rituals. lighting a candle on the anniversary of a death, leaving bread for a wandering soul, placing a coin over the eyes of the deceased, not just to keep them closed, but to pay the ferryman on the other side. Women read tea leaves, men consult almanacs. Children chant skipping rhymes with eerie accuracy, not realizing they're echoing ancient fears dressed up in rhyme. And then there are the trinkets, sold in markets and back alleys, tiny bottles of colored liquid, dried herbs tied with string, amulets that promise protection from illness, heartbreak, or bad dreams. Some swear by them. Others scoff until they catch fever, and then they return quietly. The church frowns on it all, of course. The vicar preaches against witchcraft and pagan nonsense, but even he hesitates to walk through the graveyard after dark. Because deep down, everyone in the Victorian world knows this truth. God may watch over the living, but the dead walk beside them. You hear stories of women cursed after scorned love, of men who wake to find ghostly handprints on the window pane, of babies born with a call marked for second sight, of strangers who arrive just before disaster strikes and then vanish. You believe in saints, but also in omens. You trust in doctors, but still tie blue ribbons around a sick child's wrist. You kneel in church, but avoid the crossroads after midnight. Your world is a strange fusion of sacred and superstitious, of Christian doctrine and old folk magic, of scripture and whispers. Even science is suspect. The Victorians love it, yes, but fear it too. Mesmerism, phrenology, electricity. It's all brilliant and unnatural. People bring corpses to lectures, attend seances in parlors, wonder aloud if the soul can be measured in pounds and ounces. You might work 6 days a week, break your back in the mill, watch your friends vanish into the fog. But on Sunday, you still walk to the church. You still kneel. You still pray. You don't know if God hears, but it's safer to act like He does. You cross yourself before bed, blow out the candle, and listen to the wind rattle the window pane. Was that just the glass? Or something else? You close your eyes tight and say the prayer again, just in case. Because in this world, belief isn't a comfort, it's a lifeline. And you cling to it with both hands. The workday crawls on, dragging its limbs like the tired men and women slumped over looms and carts and buckets. But eventually, whether you're in a factory or a kitchen, or scraping soot from chimney flues, the day breaks, if only for a moment. And in that moment, you hope for a meal. You don't go home for lunch. There's no lunch break. Not officially. Maybe you steal a few minutes in a dark corner, or behind the stables, or on the back steps of the shop. It's not so much a meal as a negotiation with hunger. If you're lucky, you have something in your pocket. A piece of bread, a heel of cheese, maybe an apple that's more bruised than fruit. If you're really lucky, it's warm. But warmth is rare. Most meals in the Victorian working-class diet are cold, repetitive, and just enough to keep you standing. The word nutrition doesn't really enter the conversation. You're not aiming for balanced. You're aiming for survival. The basics? Bread, porridge, potatoes, maybe cabbage if you're lucky. a thin stew that's more water than meat. And when there is meat, it's the kind that's either suspiciously cheap or clinging to a bone like it's been through something. You eat with your hands. Your spoon, if you have one, is dented, your bowl chipped. You wipe your mouth on your sleeve, or not at all. The bread? Tough, dense, often dry. The potatoes? Sometimes raw in the middle, sometimes half rotten. You eat them anyway. Your stomach doesn't complain anymore. It just accepts. Water is not to be trusted. It carries cholera, typhoid, dysentery. You boil it if you have time, or you don't. Some people add vinegar to purify it. Most just pour gin. Ah, gin. Sweet, bitter, cheap, dangerous. In some neighborhoods, it's easier to find than clean water. It burns going down. It numbs the ache. For a penny, you can forget you're cold, hungry, or alive. For 2 pennies, you might sleep without dreams. Children drink it. Elderly drink it. It's called mother's ruin, and not without reason. But there's also beer, milder, more respectable. It's weaker than modern beer, almost like liquid bread. Even children drink small beer. It's safer than water, after all. The real treats? Rare and fleeting. A meat pie bought from a street vendor. A slice of eel jelly, if your stomach's brave. A roasted chestnut on a winter evening. A piece of fruit that hasn't yet begun to rot. You don't dine. You eat. But still, after work, somehow, people find ways to gather, to talk, to laugh. Entertainment in the Victorian world isn't elegant unless you're wealthy. No orchestras or grand banquets for you. But the working class, they make do. The most common gathering place? The pub, gaslit, smoky, packed wall to wall with sweat and shouting. It's noisy, it's loud, it's warm, and that counts for something. You pay your penny, grip your pint, and try to find a seat before someone spills stew on it. The pub is the Victorian poor man's lounge, therapist's office and social club in one. It's where you blow your wages or argue politics or sing until your throat gives out. There might be a fiddler in the corner, maybe a man with a concertina. A song breaks out, a familiar one. Everyone joins in, even the off-key voices. Especially the off-key voices. Children aren't banned from pubs. They run under tables, sneak sips from abandoned tankards, fall asleep in corners under coats. They'll be working soon enough. For now, they get to listen. And the songs, they're bawdy, dark, sarcastic, and painfully true. Songs about death, about the price of coal, about landlords and rats and betrayal and bread. Everyone knows the words. If not the pub, then maybe the market. Bustling, chaotic, alive. Vendors shouting over one another. Smells of roasted meat, dried fish, overripe fruit, fresh hay, and manure. A child plays a tin whistle for coins. A woman sells ribbons that unravel by nightfall. A man with no teeth offers palm readings. You don't believe in it, but still. You ask him if things will get better. He smiles, says, "Not today." You nod. Somehow, that helps. In summer, there are street fairs, games that are barely games. Toss a hoop, catch a pig. Guess the weight of the merchant's wife. prizes include toffees, buttons, and bragging rights. There are penny theaters, too. You pay your coin and enter a dark, creaky room that smells like candle wax and damp coats. On stage, a melodrama plays out. Hero, villain, damsel. The audience boos, cheers, throws peanuts. It's rough, rowdy, glorious. You know it's fake, but it's a story. And for a few minutes, that's enough. Sometimes, you find yourself at a tavern quiz, hosted not by a school teacher, but by an old man who can barely see the paper. You answer riddles. You win a sausage. Everyone cheers. Other nights, you just walk. Down the same fog-choked streets, arm in arm with someone who's just as tired as you. You watch the lamps flicker. You talk about nothing. You make jokes too dark to say during the day. You watch people dance through the windows of a ballroom you'll never enter. And somehow, it's enough. If you're a woman, your entertainment options are narrower. Respectability narrows the walls of your world. But you sew, you gossip, you sing, you gather around a kettle and swap stories while you mend trousers and clean fish. You laugh. You survive. And for the children, they play in the filth. Stick games, pebble games, hopscotch drawn in coal dust. They chase rats. They imitate drunks. They make dolls from rags and stories from nothing. They don't know they're poor yet. And when Sunday comes, the one real day off, you put on your best rags and stroll. That's what Victorians do. You promenade in the park. You walk the streets slowly, showing your face, nodding at others doing the same. It's not rest, not really, but it's something almost human. So yes, meals are grim, drinks are strong, and entertainment comes in ragged forms, but they still gather, they still sing, still cheer, still find joy in cracked mugs and tin whistles and jokes that make your ribs hurt. Because even in the soot, even in the hunger, even in the cold, you are alive. And for tonight, at least, that has to be enough. The cough begins before sunrise. Not yours, someone else's. It rattles through the paper-thin walls like a warning bell. Deep, wet, hollow. You've heard it before. You've always heard it. In the Victorian world, sickness isn't an exception. It's the background noise of life. Everyone is sick. Everyone is getting sick. Everyone has lost someone to illness and knows they'll likely lose more. And that includes you. Your joints ache more than they should. Your gums bleed sometimes. There's a strange pain behind your eye that comes and goes. You don't say anything. There's nothing to be done. If it gets worse, you'll go to bed with a wet rag and hope for the best. You'll pray it passes, that your lungs don't fill, that your teeth don't rot further, that you don't lose your fingers, your toes, your mind. Because medicine isn't medicine. Not like you'd hope. Not like you'd trust. Doctors exist, yes, but they cost money. And unless you're middle class or higher, you don't get real treatment. You get whispers. You get guesswork. You get bleeding. That's right. Bloodletting is still practiced. You're told it balances your humors. You're told your illness is caused by an imbalance of bodily fluids, blood, phlegm, black bile, yellow bile. You don't know what most of those are, but you know you don't want less blood. And yet, when you're sick, that's what they take. They slice your arm, let it drip into a bowl, maybe apply leeches, maybe apply mustard plaster to draw the badness out. If you're lucky, a doctor shows up with a black bag and a clean shirt. If you're not, it's a barber surgeon with a shaky hand and a knife that hasn't been boiled since the last patient. There is no anesthesia, not unless you count strong gin or biting a stick. For broken bones, they splint and hope. For fever, they fan you and wait. For infection, they wrap you in rags and hope you don't rot from the inside. For childbirth, they tell you to lie still and scream quietly. And for mental illness, you're not ill, you're hysterical, or sinful, or mad. Some are sent to asylums, others are locked in basements. If you're a woman, you're accused of nerves. If you're a man, you're told to drink less and get fresh air. There is no diagnosis, just shame, just silence. And the diseases, they come fast and merciless. Cholera is the worst. It starts with water, always water. A pump handle on Broad Street, a public well, a bucket that's shared. You drink it, and within hours, your stomach twists like it's being wrung dry. You vomit, you sweat, you convulse, you die. Your body shrivels, lips blue, skin drawn tight across your bones. You look like you've been dead for days, even before you stop breathing. And sometimes it doesn't stop at one. It takes the whole house, the whole street. A wave of death, silent and invisible and everywhere at once. Then there's consumption, what we now call tuberculosis. It's slow, creeping. It starts with a cough that never leaves, then blood on the handkerchief, then ribs that show through skin and cheeks that sink like old bread. People say it's romantic. They're wrong. It's slow suffocation, and no one survives. Then typhoid, from spoiled food. Dysentery, from contaminated hands. Scarlatina, measles, whooping cough, all deadly, all fast, all common. Children die first. Children always die first. You lose brothers, sisters, cousins, babies. Tiny graves dot every cemetery. No one is surprised anymore. A child reaches 5? That's a miracle. You walk past posters warning of smallpox. You see the pockmarked faces. You know those scars. Everyone does. Some wear them like badges of survival. Others never got the chance. The smell of sickness is everywhere. Sour sweat, rotting flesh, the sweet, sticky scent of something going bad in the lungs. You know when someone's dying. You can smell it. When that smell enters your own home, it's already too late. The local apothecary offers cures, or claims to. Small glass bottles with brown labels. Elixir of health. Tonic of purity. Restorative drops. You buy them if you can. They taste of alcohol, sugar, and sometimes opium. Do they help? Hard to say. They dull the pain. That's enough. Some women swear by herbs, wormwood, valerian, comfrey, foxglove. Some soothe, some kill. All are taken with desperate hope. Others go to faith healers, to spiritualists, to women who mix poultices in secret and whisper prayers while laying hands on foreheads. The church condemns it. The sick keep going because the doctor's not coming. And if he does, he brings more fear than comfort. Death in the Victorian world doesn't come with dignity. It comes with fever dreams, prayers muttered between spasms, and neighbors who open the window to keep the soul from getting trapped inside. And when it's over, the body is laid out in the front room. If you can't afford a coffin, you borrow one for the viewing and return it after. If you can't afford mourning clothes, you wear black ribbons. If you can't afford a burial, you go into the pauper's grave. No stone, no name. And yet, there are rituals. Even in poverty, death has etiquette. Mirrors are covered so the soul doesn't get lost. Curtains are drawn. The clock is stopped. Coins are placed on the eyes. Flowers are arranged to mask the smell. Lavender, rosemary, anything strong. You might sit up all night with the body, keeping vigil, whispering, crying, waiting. Because you don't want them to go alone, and you don't want them to come back. You fear being buried alive. It happens. Coffins are sometimes equipped with bells, just in case. There are horror stories, bodies clawing at lids, scratches inside the wood. You try not to think about it. But you do. You fear plague, quarantine, dissection by medical students, being forgotten. You fear dying in a workhouse, alone and nameless, your body sold to science for a few shillings and dumped in a pit. But mostly, you fear dying slowly, in a bed that's not yours, in clothes that aren't clean, with no one to hold your hand. So you wear your scarf even in summer. You boil your water. You say your prayers. You nod at the woman who sells charms in the alley. You listen when the old man talks about drafts and the death wind that comes under the door. Because death isn't just a moment. It's a neighbor, a shadow, a permanent resident of the city. It sits on the edge of your bed, and it always, always has your address. You wake again before dawn, not because of the light, there isn't any, but because someone's already moving across the floor. You hear the creak of bare feet on wood, the clink of a pot, the rustle of cloth. She's up. She's always up. In your world, a woman never rests. Not really. If you're a woman in the Victorian working class, your life is labor wrapped in silence. Physical, emotional, invisible. You wake early, before the children, before the fire, before the street. You dress quickly, quietly. If you're lucky, you have a single moment of stillness to pull your shawl around your shoulders and breathe. But likely, the baby's crying already, and you rise because no one else will. Motherhood is not romantic here. It is constant. It is backbreaking. It is dangerous. You may have 6 children, maybe 8. You've already buried 2 or 3. You don't talk about them, but you remember their names. You give birth in your own room, with your own blood, with your own screams muffled by a rag between your teeth. No pain relief, no nurses, maybe a neighbor with rough hands, maybe a midwife with a bottle of gin. And once the baby is out, you're back on your feet in days, if you're lucky. The laundry doesn't stop. The meals don't cook themselves. The coal bucket still waits by the door. And when the child cries, you answer. Because if you don't, no one will. You feed them what you can. Watered milk, stale bread mashed with broth. You wrap them in rags and hope the room is warm enough tonight. You rub their gums with sugar when they teeth. You rub their chest with goose fat when they wheeze. When they cough blood, you don't cry. You hold them closer. There's no room for tears. As a woman, your job is everything. You are cook, cleaner, nurse, laundress, teacher, protector, and sometimes income. Because many women don't just tend to the home. They work. And not in clean, proper shops. In match factories, in laundries, in back rooms with fumes so strong they burn your eyes. You stand 12 hours over a wash tub. You roll tobacco until your fingertips crack. You make dresses for ladies who will never learn your name. And when the boss gets handsy, you don't scream. You pull away. Quietly. You need the job. You are always tired. Always. But the world expects you to be neat, pleasant, and untouched. You are supposed to be modest. You are supposed to be chaste. You are supposed to be grateful. And God help you if you're not. A woman who speaks too loudly is scolded. A woman who walks alone is shamed. A woman who can read is dangerous. A woman who can't cook is useless. And if you're unmarried with a child, you're cast out. Some women fall into prostitution, not by choice, but by survival. Some work in the shadows, away from the judgmental eyes of the parish. Others work in full view, leaning against doorways, painted faces, eyes already gone tired. They earn pennies, but pennies feed children. And the children? Their world is no gentler. They start working early, 6, 7, 8 years old. Their hands are small enough for the machines. Their legs strong enough to climb chimneys. Their backs straight enough to carry baskets. Childhood, as you know it, does not exist. There are no toys, no school books unless you are lucky or chosen by a charitable society. No naps, no play dates. Play happens in alleys, chasing rats, digging in coal piles, making dolls from rags and pipe stems. They sing skipping rhymes about cholera and plague and death. They laugh because they don't yet understand the words. They learn fast. They learn to step aside for the constable. They learn when to speak and when to vanish. They learn how to beg, how to steal, how to carry pails without spilling a drop. And they learn that nothing is promised, not even tomorrow. Families are large. They have to be. Too many die young. Too many vanish. A lost child is mourned and remembered, but also expected. There's no time to grieve. There's work to be done. Fathers, when present, are often silent, tired, distant. Some drink, some rage, some simply sit and stare at the fire like they've already left this world in their mind. Others try. They patch boots. They teach prayers. They carry sleeping children upstairs and tuck them into beds with lice and cold feet and whispered stories of better days that never were. The home is loud, cramped, full. You share space with siblings, cousins, even lodgers, strangers who pay for a corner and bring fleas and secrets. There is no privacy. You dress behind curtains. You whisper dreams you don't dare pursue. But you also laugh. Because even here in this cracked, broken place, families find joy. They sing together. They dance in the kitchen on payday. They share crusts and secrets and stolen kisses in the corner. They fight and make up. They name babies after the ones who didn't make it. And they survive. Together. Because in the end, that's all family is here. A fragile raft in a sea of soot and silence. You might not have heat. You might not have hope. But if someone is holding your hand, the darkness feels just a little less deep. It's afternoon now, though you wouldn't know it by the sky. The smog is thick as soup. The sun, if it's there at all, hangs behind a curtain of coal dust and chimney smoke, casting a dull gray light over the street. You squint up at it, cough, and look away. It's the second half of your day, and things aren't getting easier. After the morning's labor and the rushed meal, if you even had one, comes the afternoon. This is when the cracks begin to show, not just in your boots or your back, but in the very structure of Victorian society. And the cracks are deep. The class divide in this world is everywhere. It lives in your breath, in your skin, in the stitching of your coat. You walk past a gentleman and instinctively step aside, eyes down. His shoes are polished. Yours are patched. He has gloves. You have calluses. His cologne fights the stink of the city. You wear its stench like a second skin. You know your place. Everyone does. There are no illusions here. The rich ride in carriages, their wheels flinging mud onto the hems of your dress as they pass. They look out from behind glass windows and see you, maybe, as part of the scenery. A blur of noise and rags and smoke. They hold power. You hold silence. If a wealthy man strikes a poor one, it's discipline. If a poor man strikes back, it's a crime. If a factory owner refuses to pay wages, he's protecting profits. If the workers strike, they're agitators, dangerous, replaceable. You don't have rights. Not really. You have obligations. You pay rent. You obey. You keep your head down and your voice low. But sometimes, that voice rises. Sometimes, someone gets fed up, tired of the 14-hour days, the children coughing up blood, the cold room and the cold boss, and the colder truth that nothing ever changes. And that's when the conflict begins. You've seen it. Men shouting in the street, a gathering outside a mill, a banner raised in trembling hands, demands scrawled on paper. Fewer hours, more pay, safety, dignity. They're met with laughter, or worse, police. Constables in dark coats with batons and boots. They push back the crowd. They don't care why you're angry. They don't want to hear your story. Their job is order. And you are disruption. Sometimes you run, sometimes you fight. Sometimes you're dragged into an alley and beaten until your ears ring, and no one stops it. Even your neighbors look away. Because if you're seen helping a troublemaker, the landlord will raise your rent. The boss will cut your hours. Your children might be sent away. You might be marked. So you watch from the shadows. You whisper support. You slide a crust of bread, to a locked-up striker. You do what you can quietly, because the system doesn't just grind down your body, it divides you. Neighbor against neighbor, Catholic against Protestant, man against woman, old against young, Irish against English, those who beg against those who steal against those who still believe in honest work. Prejudice festers in the cracks. Irish families, even poorer than the English, are blamed for everything. They live in the worst slums, take the worst jobs, eat the worst food, and yet they're accused of being lazy, dirty, unruly. Women who speak up are called shrill, loud, improper. Children who cry are scolded. Children who work too slowly are beaten. If you make trouble, they call you a radical, a Chartist, a communist, a threat to queen and country, someone who wants to undo the sacred order of things. And the sacred order? It's this. You work, you suffer, you die. And you don't ask questions. Even justice isn't justice. The courts favor the rich. The police protect property, not people. If you're arrested, you sit in a cold cell with rats and lice and a bucket for a toilet. You might be fined more than your month's wages. You might be sent to prison, or deported, or worse. Corruption is everywhere. Magistrates paid off, inspectors looking the other way, landlords bribing officials, business owners hiding injuries to avoid inspection. The law is like the sky here, high above, and full of things that drop on your head when you least expect them. Still, people fight back, in small ways. A loaf stolen from a cart, a rent skipped, a lie told to an overseer, a fake injury to get a day of rest, a few extra pebbles slipped into the scale when selling coal. Resistance is a whisper. Sometimes it's a shout. You hear rumors, workers planning to unionize, secret meetings in back rooms, men with dirt under their nails speaking of revolution like it's a bedtime story. But revolutions are for the bold. You still have mouths to feed, so you hold your anger like a coal in your hand. You can't throw it, but you won't drop it either. Afternoon fades, but not fast enough. Your body is screaming. Your knees ache. Your spine feels like it's made of old rope. You haven't sat down in hours. You see a woman crying outside a shop. She's been sacked. No reason, no warning, no pay. Her children cling to her skirt like barnacles. No one stops to help. You pass a boy being beaten by his employer, red-faced, furious, shouting that he spilled the ink. The boy doesn't cry. Not anymore. You hear a scream, then silence. You keep walking, because this is what life is here. And if you want to survive, you learn the rules. Keep moving. Stay quiet. Hide your rage. Hope no one notices. But sometimes, on the walk home, you imagine something else. You imagine standing up, speaking out, being heard. You imagine fairness, safety, warmth, a place where your worth isn't measured in how many hours you can stand before collapsing. You know it's a dream, but dreams are free. For now. The sun is gone, if it ever truly showed itself. You can't tell the difference between dusk and smoke anymore. The streets are darker now, though the fog still glows faintly orange with the light from gas lamps and kitchen fires. You cough again. Your lungs never quite clear, not here, not in this city that exhales soot as easily as breath. Night has fallen, but rest hasn't. Victorian night is not quiet, not safe, not soft. It comes with shadows, hunger, and fear. You walk home quickly, but not too quickly. Running draws attention, and attention, after dark, is dangerous. The alleys you cut through in the morning now feel tighter, like they're closing in on you. Rats scurry along the walls. Cats hiss from rooftops. You step over a body lying still in the corner. Drunk? Dead? You don't check. You don't stop. You pass a group of men shouting under a street lamp. One of them glances your way. You keep your head down. You hold your breath until they're behind you. At night, crimes bloom like mold in the damp. Petty theft, brawls, knifings, assaults. No one intervenes. There are too many stories of the helper becoming the victim. The constables walk in pairs, when they walk at all. And even they don't go into certain streets. You get home, lock the door, wedge the chair under the handle, just in case. Inside, your tiny room is dark and damp and smells of bodies. The window rattles, a loose pane. You told the landlord weeks ago, nothing's been done. You light a candle. The flame flickers in the draft, then steadies. You set it near the bed, where the straw mattress sags toward the floor. The walls flicker with shadow. The room looks even smaller in that dancing light. The others are here. Family, maybe. Or strangers who share the room. It doesn't matter. At night, you're all just bodies trying to stay warm. There is no fireplace. Just breath and blankets. And so many sounds. The baby's cough. Someone's grinding teeth. A man muttering in his sleep. Rats chewing in the walls. A neighbor screaming 2 floors down. Someone drunk, angry, or afraid. Or all 3. No one investigates. You all just pull the covers higher and try to disappear into stillness. If you're a woman, you sleep with your back to the wall. One eye open. Always. If you're a child, you cling to your mother's side, arms wrapped around her as if you could anchor her to the earth. Because in the Victorian night, death comes closer. People die in the dark, quietly, without ceremony. You go to sleep beside someone who's coughing and wake up beside someone who's cold. You call it passing in the night, a phrase that sounds poetic. Until it happens in your bed. You learn not to scream, not to panic, not to ask why. You just call for the midwife, the neighbor, the parish doctor, who comes with a clipboard, not a cure. They cart the body away before dawn. There's no time to mourn. The room is rented. The bed needs to be cleaned. The next tenant will arrive tomorrow. If you've lost someone, you hang a black cloth in the window. If you can afford it. If not, you just don't talk about it. The children ask, "Where did he go?" You say, "To heaven." You hope you're right. Some deaths are quicker. A stabbing in the street. A collapsed lung in the mine. A fall from scaffolding with no harness. No safety net, no warning. Others are slower. The wasting deaths. The ones where you watch someone disappear from the inside out. where they sweat through fevered dreams and moan names you don't recognize. You sit beside them with a rag and a prayer. You know it won't help. Still, you stay. The fear doesn't stop with death. There are fires. The buildings are close, dry, crammed with furniture, coal stoves, candles, gas lights. All it takes is one curtain, one ember, one spark. You hear the screams before you smell the smoke. Then the panic starts. Feet pounding down the stairs, children crying, someone shouting names. No fire brigade, not fast enough, not trained enough, not brave enough. You've seen buildings blacken like toast, the windows burst, the roof collapse. You know what it looks like when someone jumps. You know the smell. You try not to remember it. So you sleep lightly, if at all. Some people snore, some mutter, some pray, whispering into the thin night air like someone might be listening, and some dream. Strange, twisted dreams of streets that stretch forever, of children who never died, of bread that never ran out, of rooms that are quiet, clean, warm. You wake with tears on your cheeks. The night is long, and the worst part. You know it will come again. Every day ends the same, with darkness pressing at the windows and fear curling beneath the floorboards. But you endure. You always endure. You hold the child. You stroke the dying man's hand. You light the last candle even though you can't afford another. Because what else is there? There's no promise of tomorrow. No guarantee of warmth. Only this moment, this flame, this breath, and maybe, just maybe, the hope that you will survive the night. And now, as the candle burns low, as the city softens under a blanket of soot and shadow, you lie in bed, if it can be called that, staring up at a ceiling that groans with age, dampness, and memory. The air is still. The sounds have faded. The fire, if you had one, has gone out. All that's left is the quiet hum of your heartbeat and the slow ache behind your ribs. You made it through the day, barely. This was life for the vast majority of Victorians. Not a romantic tale of gentlemen and grand parlors, not carriages and tea parties and the soft rustle of silk gowns. No. This was real life, and it was brutal. It was a world where survival was a full-time job, where meals were scavenged, homes were crumbling, water could kill you, and a single cough might mean goodbye, where women labored in silence and men collapsed on the job, and children died before their 5th birthday with barely a whimper from the world around them, where fear walked beside you in the form of landlords, foremen, constables, and death itself, where the night was not a place of peace, but a chamber of unease, anxiety, and whispered prayers for one more morning. And yet, somehow people lived. You lived. You pushed through the noise. You worked with raw hands. You fed a family on scraps. You stitched your shoes together with thread made from hope and habit. You bent your back and held your tongue and prayed to a God who might not have been listening. But you woke up, and you kept waking up, in rooms full of cold and children and ghosts. in streets paved with mud and ash and the discarded bones of those who didn't make it. You sang when you could. You danced when no one was looking. You laughed at things that weren't funny. You found light where there wasn't any. Not because life was beautiful, but because you refused to be erased. You found meaning in the work, in the soup, in the way someone shared a crust of bread without being asked, in the way a mother held her child's hand just a little tighter on the walk home, in the way people, beaten and breathless, still gathered in pubs to sing a song too dirty for the church, but too true to forget. And now, in the quiet of the night, in your thin bed, beneath a blanket that doesn't cover your feet, you lie still and listen to the walls breathe. You think of the day behind you, the grime, the struggle, the people you passed, the shadows that walked with you, and maybe, just maybe, you allow yourself to feel something else. Not pride, not comfort, but something simpler. Gratitude. Not because your life was easy, it wasn't, but because it's over now. Because you're not really there anymore. You're here, in your own bed, in your own time, where the walls don't shake, where the windows don't rattle with every gust of wind, where your water runs clean and hot, and the sheets are not alive with mites and memory. You're not waking up to coal smoke and screaming. Not tonight. You're waking up to nothing. Because you don't have to. You're safe. You're warm. You're clean. You're free. So tonight, as you lay there with heavy eyelids and an even heavier heart, let yourself drift gently away. Let the soot fade. Let the coughs quiet. Let the footsteps in the hall dissolve into silence. Let the past remain just that, a shadow behind the curtain, fading into the distance. And let yourself, slowly and softly, fall asleep in the world you live in now, where clean sheets are not a miracle, where your bed is yours alone, where water won't kill you, where a day is not a fight for breath. Tonight, as you drift off, remember. You don't have to wake up in Victorian England. Sleep well.